if there would have been any jobs in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Mark, why don't you just open us up? Let the audience listen to our little.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, everybody. How are you guys doing? Got Gary Mitchell here with us, and this is going to be an exciting session today. And Gary's going to give us a presentation, and he and I will chat a little bit before that. And we're not live yet for everybody, and we're not recording, but you guys are just kind of getting an inside look at as we get started. We were just talking about where we've lived, and my dad worked in the aerospace industry, and I grew up in Lancaster, and he was a test pilot, but then he got too old for doing that, and he transferred to the space division, which was in Seal Beach, and that's what the move to the Fountain Valley, Huntington Beach area. I was actually Fountain Valley, but right on the border of Huntington Beach, and people have heard of it. Not many have heard of Fountain Valley. So
I used to go to a tropical fish store in Fountain Valley all the time on Warner. I know the area quite well.
Well, so here's a connection, and I can't remember the name of it, but I would go to a barber shop on the corner of Warner and what's the street that goes north-south on the west side of Fountain Valley? Bouchard.
Bouchard. Yeah.
And I would get goldfish out of the concrete rivers and take them and sell them to the barbershop, because they would have games they played with some piranha that they illegally had there of which fish would live the longest.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible, Wayne.
But so I was, I don't know whether I was, what I was doing with those fish, but meaning I was taking them to their death. I know that. I'm not proud of that, but they were flushed down toilets, ended up where they were, so were thrown away. Hey, everybody, welcome. This is going to be a lot of fun. Gary and I have a little bit of things in common. By the way, I owned a pet store for about 5 years in Boise, Idaho, prior to Petco and PetSmart. So it was a family pet store. We bought it from the estate of a guy named Mr. Clark, who owned it for 25 years. And my wife and I operated it there before we basically got pushed out of business by Petco and PetSmart. And we had a really nice tropical fish circumstance. And then I actually produced mollies in a hot water spring area south of Boise in the Bruno area, and sold those as a wholesaler all throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Wow.
So, anyway, a little commonality there.
And we have mollies in our saltwater pond, because mollies are one of those rare fish that can transition between saltwater and freshwater. And so we have them both creek, and we have them in our bay, which is really cool.
Very cool. How big do they get?
Yeah, not as big as the tropical fish that I would see. I would say maybe a couple inches. And they don't have the fancy colors that the one.
No, they would be probably pretty boring. Yeah, black would be the most common color, and then there'd be others.
Yeah, and actually these are kind of a guppy color. They're kind of kind of plain. The males have a little bit of color on their dorsal fin. So sorry for anybody who's not into mollies, but they're kind of cool.
Yeah, well, let's just do a little logistics up front here for our guests. And if you guys would, there's a little question box that you can put in your questions into. And I'm assuming what we'll do is let Jim do his presentation. We'll take the questions at the end. But please put them in there. And if you want us to unmute you and let you ask your question live to Jim when he's done with his presentation, we can do that also.
I'm Gary.
I said Jim. Gary, I'm sorry.
I mean, Jim
Gary.
is a nice name too.
You
So,
know, I was literally just on a WebEx call. I'm using all these different, it's not Google, you know, not Google, not Microsoft, not GoToWebinar, not Zoom, but the WebEx. And the guy's name was Jim, and I didn't know him well, and I kept saying it over and over. So that's why I'm into Jim. Anyway, Gary, and so why don't you put your questions in there and comments and thoughts, and we'll make sure Mark will be screening them. I'll be looking at them. And we're going to start out just with a little short interview here, and then we'll get to Gary's presentation. So we've already shared a little bit about where we've lived. So tell us, why don't you tell the whole group now about, take it back to your childhood. Tell everybody where you've been hanging out through your life, Gary.
Oh, I'm a native-born Californian. I was born in Torrance, California, and lived in Torrance as a young kid and moved to Whittier. Except for the time that I was performing, I spent a number of years on the road as a singer-songwriter. But except for the time when I was performing, it was pretty much Southern California. As an adult, the last place I lived was San Dimas. And I never lived any place longer than there. It was 22 years in San Dimas. So that's where I hail from. And now I'm in Bocas del Toro, Panama.
Yeah, this is very cool. I got to tell you a funny one. So I just about bought a hotel in Costa Rica, in Quepos, and it was owned by a guy from Chicago who had won the land that he built it on in a poker game with Jimmy Buffett.
Gosh.
In a poker game, Jimmy Buffett owned the land. Jimmy was down to his last dollars in the game and said, "Will you take my land that's down the road from where we're at as a bet?" And these guys said yes. And this guy that ended up having the hotel there, won it in a poker game from Jimmy Buffett. So, and Jimmy stayed and still spends some time in that area. And
it's beautiful. Quepos is beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway.
Why did you decide against buying it?
The recession. So we were there 08, 09, and we actually did buy some land, and we built a beautiful ropes course on it, which is, and as well as a zip line course that's still operating, and we got that up and running and then sold it. And one of my partners eventually did buy a different hotel, not the one that we were looking at, probably in 13 or 14. And he sold it about 2 years ago. So he had it for 7 years, 6 years or so, maybe. And then I got back into this dog hobby that you talked about, and I'm serious enough about it that I haven't traveled overseas nearly as much and as I used to, just because of the continuity that I like to have as I'm doing the training that I do. And I just wouldn't be able to do it if I did that. So I've given a little bit of that up. And I think I'm like you, because I asked him to start out everybody before you came on. I said, "Is this kind of permanent, or would you ever come back to California?" And you say it. Tell everybody now what you told me.
You're going to have to pry my old frigid hands off of the trees to get me to leave here. I will never go back to live in California. No way.
And by the way, I was very close to that feeling about Quepos area, and it's a combination of the beauty, but also the people. The people are just so special there, and I've heard in Panama there's a similar situation. So anyway,
it's wonderful. Panama is like what Costa Rica was 30 years ago. So we were first going to relocate to Costa Rica. That was my dream. And do you know Manuel Antonio?
Oh yeah, well that's Quepos is adjacent to Manuel. Literally, it's just the city adjacent to Manuel Antonio. Yes.
Yeah. So the last time I had been in Manuel Antonio was in 1995, and it was this beautiful, unspoiled, paradise where the rainforest meets the sea. There were only these 6 little eco resorts. And that was what I had in mind. And so in 2017, I took Carlo and we went to go look for the land. And I was so excited to show him Manuel Antonio. And somehow I ended up in the middle of Los Angeles, or at least that's how it felt. Manuel Antonio went from this sleepy, beautiful, tropical paradise to this concrete jungle with buildings and traffic and craziness. And you could only find the rainforest behind the gate. So we had to find what Costa Rica used to be. And that's what Bocas del Toro is. Here you can travel for miles without seeing another person, without seeing a building. You're just in paradise, Wayne. It is absolutely gorgeous.
You know, the one thing that there's at least a little more of on the Pacific coast than there is on the Caribbean where you're at is surf, which is what drew me initially to the area of Cape Coast. There's a break right off and there's several other breaks. And the reason I went down to Panama, and you're absolutely right about what's happened with Manuel Antonio and Cape Coast and that whole area. It has become very Americanized, and a lot of the beauty has been taken away. The national park, St. Manuel Antonio, which is just adjacent to the real commercialized beach area, is still in really nice shape. But then you've really got to go south up down the Pacific coast now further to get into any place in Costa Rica that's still anything like what it was that you saw in '95.
Would that be by maybe Matapalo, that kind of area, or down to Golfito?
Down to Golfito, and then Porto. Well, the road, when I first went there, for 100 kilometers was a 6-hour drive. Literally, it was just potholes after mud baths after. It's now paved, so there and wouldn't even be farther south without going out into the ocean down. So
we live on the mainland. Okay. However, you can't get here unless by boat. That's the only way you can get here. There's no roads, and I love that.
Very cool. Well, tell me about your sort of what motivated this. So what motivated the move, and then if you're going to get into this in your presentation, we'll just say that. But what motivated going down there?
Yeah, that's definitely part of what we'll be talking about in the presentation. But
okay, good, good.
I can summarize it by telling you that we were greatly concerned for the state of the environment, and we wanted to do more than just talk about it. And because rainforests are the areas on our planet that hold the vast majority of species, we wanted to come down to a place where we could have maximum impact on protecting as many species as possible.
Very cool. Well, that's a great segue into letting you go ahead with your presentation. I'm going to actually just mute my webcam because there's no reason for me to be on. Oh, you know what? I thought of one other question. The other thing that Gary had mentioned before you came on, everybody, was you went through a time in your life when you were a performer. Tell us a little bit about that time frame.
Oh, I did, yeah. That was I was pretty sure I'd be famous one day. You know how that is with those young dreams, right? Yeah, I performed internationally, and I have 2 great loves in my life, and those are music and nature. And I spent time on the road. I spent time on cruise ships. I did TV, radio, just about anything that I could, theater, and it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And now I use my music as a vehicle to hopefully inspire people to take better care of this beautiful planet of ours.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, that's a great transition. So I'm going to mute my webcam. I'll still be here. I'm just gonna kind of pause it here, and you go for it, Gary.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit with you today. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to start out with a little bit of what my TED Talk was. And that's going to kind of give you a little bit of purview into who I am and why we're here. Here we go. Are you ready? All trees are not created equal. It's kind of a strange thing to say, don't you think? It probably seems pretty obvious to you, but frankly, it was something that I gave very little thought to until recently, and now this has become a pivotal part of my life. So how did I get here? Wondering about the importance of some trees over others, and why should you care? Way back in 2002, while luxuriating in the bliss of Los Angeles traffic, I happened to be listening to an interview with Princeton professor and climatologist Michael Oppenheimer. This guy freaked me out. As a lifelong nature lover and contributed to numerous environmental organizations, I thought myself to be somewhat well-informed. Wrong. In less than half an hour, Professor Oppenheimer shattered my reality. He spoke about how many climate-related extinctions had already taken place in that decade alone. He detailed vast animal, fish, and even plant migrations away from the equator. He painted a future that, quite frankly, scared me. What I couldn't understand was, after donating to environmental organizations for years, why did I have no idea just how devastating the plight of life on Earth actually was? Well, I'm the type of person that if I learn of something that reeks of injustice, I must act. Not to do so creates an unbelievable panic inside of me. So I founded an environmentally based nonprofit, which I named Planet Rehab, in the hopes of giving a mouthpiece to those that did not have a say in our modern world. For 17 years, we labored diligently in San Dimas, California, to create every type of experience that we could conceive of, to light a spark in others so people would not only care enough to listen, but, well, to be part of the solution. We even turned our backyard into an animal sanctuary where we cared for over 350 animals. Yeah, you heard me correctly. 350 animals lived in our backyard. This included a grumpy alpaca named Benjamin, his best friend, Buddy the goat, Alan, a cantankerous 300-pound sulcata tortoise, 37 species of birds, which meant peacocks and roosters singing in the middle of the night, and quite a few other species. Oh, and of course, anything that well-meaning visitors happen to find, such as orphan baby birds, baby possums, baby raccoons, that quite often required around-the-clock care. As part of our outreach, we hosted beach cleanups and Earth Day events, butterfly encounters and plant-based food festivals, original echo musicals, and milkweed planting expeditions. Thousands of children and adults came through our gates, but as time went on, our planet's environmental situation went from really bad to horrific. When the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity Loss came out with their 2019 report detailing that in addition to the 200 species already going extinct every single day, an additional 1 million species were facing imminent extinction, we asked why. We learned that over a third of the planet's species lived in rainforests and that their extinction was directly tied to rainforest destruction. So again, we asked why. Was it for paper, construction, highways? I was genuinely shocked to learn that 91% of the Central American and Amazon rainforest destruction was due to the cattle industry. My husband Carlo and I felt it was time for a change. We came to the conclusion that we had done as much as we could from our San Dimas abode and decided to move to a location where we could work directly with boots on the ground to protect precious rainforest and endangered species. Through a series of Kismet-inspired events, we ended up moving to a beautiful 30-acre jungle on the banks of Dolphin Bay in Bocas del Toro, Panama, which, along with being home to monkeys, sloths, toucans, parrots, and more, was actually an organic chocolate farm and nature preserve called Green Acres. So as Wayne and I were just discussing, Costa Rica was my first choice. And I dreamed for over 25 years of moving to Costa Rica. When we went in 2017 to do our reconnaissance mission and to really check out real estate, I was devastated to see how Costa Rica had gone from this just unblemished paradise to an area that was very reminiscent of Los Angeles traffic. So while searching the web, I found a jungle lodge in Panama that was called Rambala Jungle Lodge. And I felt something when I saw these pictures. And I told Carlo, and he said, well, we need to go out. Rambala Jungle Lodge was about 3 hours away from where we are right in Toro. It was beautiful. It was priced very competitively, 75 acres, but you had to off-road for about 20 minutes. And then after that, you had to climb the mountain for another 20 minutes in the rain. And it just didn't work for us. There was a lady, however, that was a friend of the owners, and she was hired to show us the property. Her name was Erica. Erica is someone that we both love and fear in equal measure. And Erica said, you know, I have friends that are selling a chocolate farm. You should go check it out. Well, we were just trying to be, you know, agreeable and said, oh yeah, if we have time, we'll go check it out. Well, Carlo and I went to go and look at a waterfall, and we came back to the lodge, and here's Erica. I have it all arranged. I talked to the owners. They're waiting to meet you. We're going to the chocolate farm right now. Well, I had no intention of buying a chocolate farm. This was not at all in the cards. I just wanted to help out the rainforest, but against our will, we were brought to this chocolate farm that my better half immediately fell in love with and promptly informed me that this was going to be our new home. I wasn't convinced quite so rapidly. I didn't know anything about growing chocolate. I just figured there was probably a Hershey Kiss tree somewhere. Well, this became our new home. And the first thing that I learned about growing chocolate, or cacao as it's called, is that it has to live beneath a thriving rainforest canopy. Score 1 for the environmentalist. I also learned that people travel from all over the world to tour the gardens and the botanical forests at Green Acres. And since we moved here in October 2019, we've had the privilege of hosting hundreds of tours that we've reframed as eco-educational tours. So another score for the Enviro guys. Shortly into Green Acres, we learned that our jungle happened to be home to some rather rare trees called almendro trees. Rare because their dense, termite-proof wood was so coveted by the construction industry because of the very fact that it's termite-proof. Until rather recently, almendro trees, because they were so tough, they were left alone. They were too hard to cut down. But now, thanks to improved chainsaws, almendro trees that were once safe have been destroyed almost to extinction levels. We arrived at Green Acres in Bocas del Toro, Panama in October 19. And by November, these 150-year-old almendro trees started dropping their little almendros, or South American almonds. To our surprise, in the next several months, these almendros started growing into saplings. Before we knew it, we were blessed with hundreds and then thousands of almendro saplings. Well, we knew that this tree was already extinct in a lot of areas here in Bocas, So we thought we'd take a deeper look to see if this might be a good candidate for reforestation projects. Well, sometimes things just click. Call it fate, call it destiny, but what we learned was that the almendra tree was quite possibly the most important tree in Central and South American rainforests. After researching, we found that a single almendra tree can host more than 1,000 organisms, can live for hundreds of years, can grow 150 feet tall, making it a top-tier primary rainforest tree. Like I said, sometimes things just click. Further research revealed that 16 species of mammals, 19 species of bees, and over 100 species of birds depend on the almendra tree. Because fruit in the winter, it's one of the only food sources available to many animals that live in the rainforest. And who knew that a single tree could be so important? One of Planet Rehab, our organization's team members, made us aware of a documentary on Amazon called Almendro, the Tree of Life, where we also gleaned that the almendra tree is the only tree that the critically endangered great green macaw will nest in. In August of 2020, we created a program that we Just One Tree initiative with the goal of planting 10,000 trees. Well, I'm super excited to share that to date, we have already planted 1,382 endangered almendra trees in 7 islands and 3 mainland areas here in Bocas del Toro. This gives me hope. Imagine the hundreds and thousands of species that will find food, shelter, and home during the next years. And we're just getting started. On June 24th, we will be partnering with the Panamanian Ministry of the Environment, who has challenged the country to plant 1 million trees. Today, at a time when the very systems that support life on this planet are shutting down, rainforest destruction is at an all-time high. Last year, over 91 million acres were destroyed in the Amazon, and this year, rainforest destruction projections are even higher. What are the mother sloth and her baby when the chainsaw starts to cut, or the nest of baby birds as the tree starts to fall? What is our responsibility to nature? Sadly, we haven't been doing a very good job of taking care of her. In my lifetime, in the last 4 decades, humans have wiped out 68% of wildlife on this planet. 68%. What will the next 4 decades bring? I get that not everybody can sell their home and dedicate their life to protecting nature, but we can all do something, and we must all do something. The alternative is unthinkable, and that alternative is swiftly becoming a reality. So we will continue to work to protect nature. We'll plant the king of all trees, the almendro tree, to provide shelter, food, and home to countless species. That's what we will do. But what will you do? Well, I'd like to make some suggestions, if I may, of how you can help to affect change. The first one, diet, diet, diet. Did you know that one of the most significant actions that you can take to protect endangered species is through your diet? Yes, I said endangered species. How? Well, as I stated, 91% of the Amazon destruction is due to the cattle industry. That is a frightening percentage that has overwhelmingly devastating consequences, not just in the Amazon, but for our entire planet. According to researchers at Oxford University, we need to look no further than our dinner plate to save the planet. In what has been touted as the biggest analysis to date, researchers concluded that shifting away from meat and dairy is the single most effective way to regenerate our ecosystems and prevent its destruction. Since livestock production is the largest contributor of emissions around the globe, more than planes, trains, and cars combined, removing it from our food system could allow our planet to regenerate. raising animals for food is the single largest reason for extinction around the world. Let me repeat that. The single largest reason that we are losing 200 species every day, that there's an additional 1 million species at risk of imminent extinction, is because of raising animals for food. So continuing with our diet, let's move into the palm oil pandemonium. Palm oil is viewed as a cheap resource, an oil which is in almost everything from shampoo to cookies, from beauty products to Nutella, lips, toothpaste, and so much more. How cheap is it really if the cost is extinction? Growing palm oil requires vast swaths of rainforest. As a matter of fact, the primary driver of deforestation in Indonesia, Papua, Malaysia, and New Guinea. Among many other species, orangutans are being poisoned by palm oil plantation growers to help make room for more and more palm oil plantations. Palm oil is responsible for runaway fires, for soil degradation, increased carbon emissions, socioeconomic loss, increased health risk to human and mass extinction. Well, what about fish? Well, surely by now you've heard of the new Netflix documentary, Seaspiracy. So if you haven't seen it, let me share 5 takeaways from the documentary. Number 1, the greatest source of plastic pollution in the ocean comes from the fishing industry. Fishing nets comprise 46% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Number 2, fishery workers face a perilous existence with roughly 24,000 deaths each year. In addition, and this is crazy, but even in 2021, slavery is alive and well, where people are forced to work on illegal fishing vessels and threatened with death should they attempt to escape. Number 3, commercial fishing kills more than 300,000 whales and dolphins, 50 million sharks, and 150,000 sea turtles, all as a mistake, as part of their bycatch. Number 4, sustainable labels are anything but, which means even though seafood is labeled sustainable, they still create significant levels of bycatch. Even Earth Island Institute's Dolphin Safe Tuna has no way of actually verifying that no dolphins were killed. And number 5, many falsely believe that it's necessary to eat seafood to intake omega-3 fatty acids. However, omega-3 is found not only in algae, but in other whole plant foods, including nuts, seeds, beans, vegetables, and fruits, which are free of the neurotoxic heavy metals found in most fish. As Seaspiracy lays out in vivid detail, the commercial fishing industry is polluting the oceans and destroying marine life at an astonishing rate. One of the best things we can do for the environment is to stop eating animal products, including fish. So I think a lot about the future. Wayne had asked me what led us to Panama. Well, obviously, for me, the biggest incentive was to come and really help to protect species at risk of extinction. I can't handle seeing any animal suffer, to be honest with you. It breaks my heart. But the concept that today 200 species will go extinct is just, it's unbelievable. I can't fathom it. So that is the largest, most compelling reason for me being here and dedicating my life to protecting the rainforests. But I also think about my own future. I think a lot about the future. One thing that the pandemic showed us is that we really can't rely on the current systems to take care of us. So let's talk a little bit about building our own security. We live in a rainforest. We can't take for granted that what was will always be. What do I mean by that? Well, in 2018, before we moved to Panama, Bocas del Toro experienced its first devastating drought. So severe was this drought that the Panamanian government was actually forced to deliver water to many of the native villages that were actually dying. Not only were people without water, but the effects of the drought felt deep by the rainforest as well. You see, people in Bocas, especially the communities, they took our regular rain patterns for granted. But in a world of human-caused environmental destruction and climate change, we cannot depend upon weather patterns and crop yields of the past. It's a new game. So what to do? I believe that the more sustainable we are as individuals, the more secure our future. Here at Green Acres, we're developing a 5-year plan, which includes the following. Number 1, adding more water tanks to our system. All of our water here comes from our rooftop water catchment system. The very first investment that we made when we moved to Bocas to Green Acres was to purchase a new 1,300-gallon water tank. As we are able, we will continue to purchase additional water tanks to add to our water catchment system. Number 2, we have a plan of planting more than 500 more fruit trees. In addition to the 2,500 cacao trees that we currently have, we also have quite a few other fruit trees, which include jackfruit, bidiba, water apple, starfruit, orange, lemon, mango, coconut, papaya. We have 5 types of bananas, 3 species of platanos, and pineapples. We, however, want to grow a food forest following permaculture principles, not just for ourselves, but also for the creatures that live here. Number 3, install rain barrels with rainforest feeds. As we anticipate more droughts as climate change continues, we plan to add strategically placed rainforest barrels around the rainforest so that in times of drought, we can help to irrigate the plants and trees of the rainforest. Number 4 is to purchase a solar-based desalination system for times when there just is no rain. And number 5, our plan is to purchase additional solar panels so that we continue to be as independent as possible. So we're not only concerned about our own security. I want to make that really, really clear. We're also concerned about the security of the neighboring villages. Shortly after we moved to Panama, we noticed that the Nobe villagers, that's the indigenous that live here in Bocas, they're very unhealthy. They have a diet heavy in meat, processed foods, and sugar, which results in high levels of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and so on. Further, once the pandemic started, people lost their jobs and the villagers were left without food. This made no sense to us at all because here in Panama, you just literally stick something in the ground and it grows. So there was an educational opportunity. So for the last 6 months, we've been growing highly nutritious fruit trees and leafy vegetables, all of which are superfoods, which we will be giving to our neighboring village, Buenas. This is something that we call our Native Food Survival Kit program. And each family will be receiving 1 jackfruit tree, 1 bidiba tree, 1 water apple tree, 1 katuk vegetable bush, and 1 cranberry hybrid vegetable bush. That's a total of over 500 trees and plants that we have ready to go to be given to our neighbors in Buena Esperanza. I get that most of you listening to my talk don't live in a rainforest. So how can you become secure sustainably? There are actions that we can all take, from growing a container garden if we live in an apartment to turning our yard into a food producer. Let me share, if I may, the experience of a family that did just that in Los Angeles, actually specifically in Pasadena, California. 30 years ago, a man named Jules Dervais decided to take ownership back of his food. During the last 3 decades, Jules, with the help of his family, completely overhauled and reimagined their 1/10 of an acre property, which now produces over 6,000 pounds of food a year organically. Not only do they feed themselves, they support restaurants, they sell their organic produce to their community. And these organic vegetarians raise not only food and veggies, but they have 10 beehives, chickens, ducks, goats. They built a solar oven, which runs off the solar panels that they've installed, and have even built a roof-based water catchment system. Well, in the end, we must each decide how important life on planet Earth actually is. What are we willing to sacrifice to ensure that life continues? The future is very fragile at this time. Climate change has already begun, and more feedback loops are causing greater and greater dangers. Safeguarding our forests, protecting our oceans, rebuilding precious rainforests, these are actions that are absolutely necessary if we hope to have a viable future for ourselves and for future generations. Changing our diet to a plant-based diet, eliminating palm oil consumption, reducing our plastic consumption, and lowering our carbon footprint. If we collectively do these things, not only will we be healthier, but we'll stand a better chance of saving life on this beautiful planet. I thank you very much for listening to me and sharing this time. I will just add that if you'd like to learn more about us, we're at planetrehab.org, and you can learn all the programs that we're involved with. And I had to tell you, I really love nature, and I really want to make sure we take care of it. So thanks for listening.
Gary, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
can,
Wayne.
yeah. I've got a lot of questions, but I'd like our audience to throw theirs in first. And I was looking here, we may have some already that I could throw out there. Here's a good one. And you've got several people that have given applause as they do on the internet, which is to put ones in. But so here's one from, I know, one of our regulars who's always asked great questions. How do you compete with big financial interests with opposite views? But I'm gonna even add it. How do you do it? But then how could others do it? Also, in the same way you've phrased a lot of what you did here today in an amazing way, not just with what you're doing, but what we can do also.
I think that you have to be creative, and I think you have to be brave. A lot of people thought we were crazy when we told them that we're leaving our six-figure jobs and our cushy incomes and our lives in California to come down and live in a resort. I can't answer it for other people because it really depends on what your situation is. But I noticed that for us, Wayne, we need a lot less of everything than what we thought we needed when we lived in LA. We don't need to compete with the Joneses. We just need to have some food, and we need to be able to have enough gas on our boat so that we can go shopping once a week. We need to make sure that we have energy, and we need to make sure that we have water. We don't need to go and buy the latest car. We don't even have a car. So I think by reducing our individual needs and really seeing what's important to us as individuals, and even more importantly, how we can contribute. I'm not competing with anyone. I'm here to help. And I think that has to be kind of a nuanced change that we can look at, instead of thinking of, when I worked for 30 years in the dog-eat-dog corporate world. I'm done with that. I'm done competing. I'm here to give.
Very cool. how could one of our audience get a hold of you, and how can they help you? And then finally, how could they visit you if there's an interest there?
We are at planetrehab.org, and you can find my personal contact information there, or if you'd like to write it down, I'm at Gary M at planetrehab.org. I'm glad that you asked about visiting, because we're super excited that we are going to be providing people with the opportunity to come here and experience our environmental expedition. For 8 days, people can come and they can live with us in the jungle. They can help us with our reforestation projects, with our coral restoration projects. They can help us work with our amphibian protection program and all the different elements that we have going on here, our biodiversity mapping, and they can get a taste for what it's like to live in the rainforest. They'll also get to go to visit Monkey Island and interact with rescued primates. They'll go dolphin sightseeing and, of course, snorkeling. So that's a great opportunity if you're interested in visiting us. You can go to planetrehab.org and click on expeditions, and that will give you a little bit of information. There you go. Arib's on it. Yes.
Yeah, kind of an associated question. Sky asks, does Planet Rehab have any upcoming events? So you talked about the expeditions, but anything else event-wise that people could look forward to and maybe attend?
On the 24th of April, we're going to be doing our own Earth Day event, and it's going to be kind of a virtual extravaganza where we'll be discussing what our progress is. We're going to have some games, some trivia, prizes. It's going to be a pretty fun event, and you can get more information if you go to either planetrehab.org on our Instagram page, or if you go to Planet Rehab Facebook page. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be participating in the 1 million tree planting. We're really excited that we have provided over 200 almendro seeds to the Minister of the Environment of the country of Panama, which is super exciting. And we're going to be partnering with them to help plant as close to 1 million trees as possible. And that'll be on June 24th.
Anybody else put some questions in, because I'm going to take some of mine now for Gary while you're doing it. What's been your biggest challenge since you've been down there, and how did you deal with it?
Oh, how to pick one, Wayne? Pick one. The first challenge was our water pump broke, and we were only here for a month or 2 months. And what do? I'm not a technical person. I play guitar and I sing, okay? I had no clue. I just put on the Facebook forum, help, we need someone. I didn't know if you need an electrician or a plumber, what you need to help with the water pump. Well, it turned out to be an extraordinary experience for me, because within a couple hours of having posted that, all of a sudden, 2 people that I don't know show up in a boat. I'm a little nervous for these people showing up. And one of them, his name is Ariel, showed up with his cousin, Ricardo. And he said, my sister-in-law saw your posting that your water pump went out, and we came to fix it for you. This guy wouldn't even take any money, Wayne. He just showed up at our dock because he knew that we needed our water pump fixed. And that overall has been the type of reception we've received here, both from expats and locals as well. And that particular young man, Ariel, has since he's been our lifesaver. We hired him to install our water tank, to install 10 new solar panels. He's now building our first little cabin, which will be used for expeditions. So So that's one challenge that had quite a happy ending to it.
I was muted there. What if one of our audience wanted to move down there? Tell us how they might find a place that they could come to and get the same kind of change and wonder in their lives that you've got.
So Facebook is a needed vehicle of communication down here. And most people, expats and Panamanians, use Facebook extensively. And that's a great way to be able to learn and connect with people. Maybe 6 months before we even moved here, I had already connected with numerous people that gave us very important, essential information that helped to prepare us for our move just by connecting on Facebook. There is a forum called Boca's Forum on Facebook, and what my suggestion would be to check it out and start connecting with people, start asking questions. You may want to rent first and see, do you fit better in the city of Bocas, or do you fit better in a situation like where we are? We're about 30 minutes away from town. So that's one of the reasons that we only go up once a week. And we have to make sure that we have enough gas in our boat to be able to make it to Bocas town. Not everyone would be happy living out in a rainforest. Some people might want to buy their own private islands. The prices here, especially compared to California prices, are very reasonable. And it is just an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous place to live. Another resource that you have is me. So feel free to send me an email and I will answer whatever questions I can.
About what is the population of Bocas?
Oh, I don't know. But one thing that I can tell you is all of Panama has only 4 million people. So it's a relative small numbers of population of people. And Bocas is spread out into numerous islands. And so I'm sure that there are numbers available, but it would be difficult for me to quantify. But so many of these islands, there's just so much area that's just wild. It's just pure paradise. So there's a lot of land available, and if you are into just having a peaceful, beautiful paradise, this is definitely a place to consider.
There's several more audience questions. I have one last one though before that. One of the benefits that at least the Pacific coast of Costa Rica claims is that there really are no natural catastrophes that have occurred in that area based on records. So they don't have hurricanes there. They don't have volcanoes or earthquakes. They don't have other, natural disaster floods that are unaccounted. What about your area? Is there what could be a natural disaster? I'm guessing maybe a hurricane. You might be in a hurricane sort of potential or not. Tell us.
That's a real interesting question. So Dolphin Bay, which is the bay in front of my house, is known as the Velcro Bay. There's a lot of cruisers that are in their yachts, their sailboats, their catamarans that seek shelter in Bocas because of the fact that Bocas does not have hurricanes. And consequently, a lot of them end up buying property and retiring here. So much like the area that you spoke of in Costa Rica on the Pacific coast, Bocas del Toro is the same. It's a very, very protected area. We had imagine an animal sanctuary with 350 animals, wildfires right almost to your backyard. And imagine the absolute panic of trying to evacuate 350 animals. So I'm here in an area where there are no fires. It's too for there to be fires. Earthquakes can happen anywhere in the world, but the earthquakes here are very mild. We're protected where we are, even if there happened to be a tsunami, because we're off bay, we're not on the coast. And so it's, as far as natural disasters go, this is one of the safest places that you could ever be.
So Doug Turner, who's a real good friend and also just is a regular with us, brings something up, and I'm going to talk about it just a tiny bit different than you did, Doug. But so the founder of the Institute of Economics, which is the host of EAT, and the word EAT is Economic Action Team, is Dennis Weaver, who, being a Southern Californian, you probably know that name. Dennis was an actor who was a star in a number of things in Hollywood, but his life dream and desire was to do what you're doing. And he decided that his best way to do it was to spend some time traveling and being in places that were amazing. And he actually had his primary home when he died in Ridgedale, Colorado, which is Ridgeway, which is a beautiful off the beaten path kind of area. But he sacrificed some of those desires because he determined, I can make more money myself and give it back. And he used to say, the only reason I act is so I can make the planet better. And Dennis gave millions and millions of dollars through the years to different things, including the Institute of Economics, which he basically supported himself. But the word economics, if you don't know the definition, you should know it. And Doug says it here. As Dennis said, the only way we're going to make the world better from an ecological perspective is to show people how they can make a buck doing it. And he actually used to say it in his cowboy sort of way. He said, we've spent thousands of years and billions of dollars screwing the planet up. Now we need to show people how they can make a little bit of money making it better. And I think that's what you guys are doing. And making money doesn't mean you have a bottom line profit. It means you can survive, you can get by, you can do things, which then leads to my last question. It's just, again, observation. My guess is, even though the people you're helping at the villages and such that are close to you, they don't eat well and such, they're probably some of the more happy people on the planet. And yet many people would look at them as dirt poor, and how horrible they must be in that circumstance. Am I right? Or is that the case? That is the case in Costa Rica, by the way, as you know, where very, very poor people live right next to very, very wealthy people. And the ones that are very, very poor are oftentimes way more happy than the ones that are very, very wealthy. So
I would agree that you definitely can see that.
yeah.
That wealth definitely is not a measure of happiness. We are fortunate here. One of the benefits of having bought a chocolate farm is we do make our own organic chocolate, and we provide eco-educational tours here out to the chocolate farm, and that is what pays our bills, and that's what allows us to be able to dedicate our time and our energy. Along with, I mean, I will not short this. I appreciate all of the financial donors that do help us at Planet Rehab. But certainly, we do pay our own way so that we can dedicate all of our other time, just as Weaver was doing, to making change. You know, I think it really goes to knowing your place, and I like to share that for me, Wayne, it is a really wondrous feeling to be where you are meant to be, doing what you are meant to doing. And That's not, my answer isn't going to be the same as your answer or the same as Dennis Weaver's answer. But we have to be brave enough to look inside and see what that is, and then follow that trail and be able to walk the walk. And the benefits are beyond my ability to express.
Yeah. Sky asked, and you described this, and I think you might have asked or thought of it way. He asked, what animals have you seen? Well, you talked about, and the plethora of animals there is amazing, Sky. And I would just suggest go to the Instagram page or the Facebook page or the website, and you're going to see more different kinds of animals than you can imagine. But associated with that question, what's the animal that you interact with that you're more surprised about its life than you thought you'd be? In other words, what's an animal you can tell us about that you've observed and that you've now spent some time with that lives a little differently than what you thought?
You know, I have to really plead ignorance because I just didn't really know what to expect. I mean, you think you're going to know what to expect, but in front of where I'm looking right now are two huge acacia trees, and beyond the acacia trees is a beautiful view of our bay. And there is a family that started of about 30 individuals that now, within the last, I would say, well, the last about year and a half since we've been here, it's grown to, I think, about 50 individuals of howler monkeys. And howler monkeys are tiny. You probably see them, and no doubt have heard them. They're just about this big. I mean, they're probably smaller than a cat, yet they're the loudest animal in the world. And it has been just thrilling and educational and wondrous to watch them. They will, about every couple of weeks or so, they'll decide to jump from one of the trees in front of our house to the one next to it. You see the moms with the little babies, and little babies will hold on really tight as they jump. Would be a 40-foot drop. And they're really trusting that these tiny little branches that they're going to hold on to are going to sustain them. One of the most interesting, I watched their communication, and, you know, everyone's familiar with the, you know, the big thundering voices, but when they're not boasting as such, they chitter, and then they have all these really cute little sounds. And we would get so nervous, I still do, when they would jump from one tree to another. One of the things that surprised me most was, you know, you get the mothers with the little babies, and the babies will climb on their backs, and then they'll do the jump. Then we had this one that the baby went to climb up. He was a little bit bigger, and she said no. And she literally pushed him off the tree. I mean, thank God he made it. Then we recently, and I actually captured a video of this, we had one mom, and I don't know why she was worried, but she had a baby that was pretty large, but she used her body, and she held on with her tail, and she dove to the next tree, and she created a bridge with her body. And then she took her hand and she goes, okay, come on. And he climbed over using her body as a bridge. To watch the communication, to watch the element of caring, you feel like you're stepping in to a different world, that you're seeing things that mere mortals shouldn't be able to see. It's incomprehensible. It's amazing.
Well, I don't see any other outside questions, and we have kept you longer than the hour that we do here. We've just greatly appreciated it. I know that you're gonna touch a lot of other people on the replay side of this, because we have a huge number that watch. Doug did write something. His son, and this will be in the Q&A. Mark will send this to you, so you don't have to worry about remembering it. But his son is filming a howler monkey show for Netflix in Brazil that will be presented on Netflix sometime next year, because he's doing it in November. His website is TaylorJohnTurner.com, so you might check it out at some point.
Oh,
so,
thank you.
because of
Great.
the howler monkey interest. So I'm sure he'll
Awesome.
talk. And he's done things all over the world, Morocco, I know, and other places in Africa. And he's an amazing videographer. So that will
Well,
be
tell
great.
him to come to Green Acres Chocolate Farm.
Yeah, that would be great.
There's a lot he can shoot here.
Can we buy Green Acres chocolate, or do you wholesale it? Really, is it branded?
Unfortunately, you can only buy it locally. We do sell it in a couple of the stores here in Bocas, and we sell it. Some of the restaurants serve our chocolate desserts. The reason why is apparently the shipping is so expensive that it just wouldn't even make sense. But what you can do, Wayne, is you can come down and visit us, and I'll give you some for free.
That'll work. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you. It's a Friday here in evening here in Colorado. And actually, I'm in Texas. It's a wee evening here. I think at least in Costa Rica, we were Central Time. Are you Central Time also, or what's your time zone?
It goes back and forth. Right now, it's saying that we're Eastern Time. We're 5 o'clock here, and I think you are
that's
6
Central.
o'clock.
No, that's Central.
Central? Okay.
Yeah, that's the same time it is here. So
Okay.
where I'm at in Texas. Anyway, wherever you're at in the world, have a wonderful weekend, or you're already in it. Figure out how you can do your little thing. Gary gave you a number of different thoughts. Come back and watch the replay for this again if you didn't jot those things down. And we've got amazing webinars next week and scheduled way out into the future. Appreciate you being friends and coming, and I hope you get fed from what you hear and what you see. And Gary, we hope we can help feed you to some extent, feed your enthusiasm, which you have a huge amount of, we can see, feed your just everything in your life. And if we can help with that, we appreciate that. So
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Mark, why don't you take us out?